in the book, one of the things I hope people pick up that, young people don't think about very much is testing. I was never a person that, kind of like you with your wife, right? I'm going to do this thing. And then in order to perform, I learned every biohack. But I don't want to get in the system and get measured. But today, there's some amazing tests. So I used to be afraid of cancer. There's a brand new test. The one thing in common in the book I should mention is I tell you all these stories of these amazing human beings that have created these breakthroughs. And what they all have in common, these huge breakthroughs, some of which took 20 or 30 years and are just now available, they all lost somebody. They lost a wife or a husband or a child or a close patient, and it drove them not to accept the standard of care and find a new solution. And so one of those is this test called GRAIL. It's a simple blood test anybody can do now. It just came out 8 months ago. And it allows you to test your body for any cancer in your body. And so why is that important? Well, because the National Cancer Institute did a study and they found that if you get diagnosed at stage 3 or 4, you have an 80% chance of dying. I prefer I have a 20% chance of living and figuring that out. But their point is well made. It's hard to turn around. If you get it at stage 1 or 2, you have an 80 to 99.9% chance of living. So with cancer, it's going to affect most people in their lifetime. To be able to do a quick blood test and or an MRI for those pieces and know exactly what's going in your body is amazing. We had a gentleman that came to one of our centers, and he had already had his physical, and his wife said, I want you to have the very best. And he's like, I've already done. He had a really negative attitude about it, which we understood. And one of the docs said, listen, let's do the GRAIL test on you. He'd already had urinalysis, blood tests, traditional physical, and the guy ended up having bladder cancer. Wow. But it was really early stage.
You caught it early, right.
So it was a 20-minute outpatient procedure. He has no cancer. If he wouldn't have caught it, you got a real problem. Another one is, it's called a CCTA scan. It's brand new. It's one of my doctor friends, one of my partners in one of my businesses called me up and he says, Tony, and he's like Mr. Understated. He built 12 hospitals and then he sold them because he wants to be in prevention and regeneration. And he says, Tony, there's been one of the greatest breakthroughs in cardiology that I've seen in the last 10 years. You got to come check it out. What is it? He goes, when a doctor does a CT scan, usually you don't get that unless you got a problem. There's a lot, it's hard to read those scans. They're very gray. If you're very skilled, you'll still miss it. But there's this new scan now that uses AI, and it literally opens every artery in your body, because what they're looking for is soft plaques. Soft plaques can break off, and it's called the widowmaker, give you a heart attack or a stroke. And it happens to people now 35, 40 years old. It's happening younger and younger because of the lifestyles that we've taken on. But what's interesting is hardened calcium, which is what they see when they do just a traditional scan, is healed. So I heard about it, said I'm going to go do the scan, and I took my father-in-law with me because he's 80 years old, and people around you when you get older start saying you should organize your affairs, and I could just see his energy drop. He's a great guy. Anyway, I took him, did the scan. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. And his entire attitude changed. Plus, we have the stuff we do for a lot of the great athletes think their career's over, where they scan an area where you've had an injury, and they use ultrasound, and then they use this fluid, amnio fluid, and they open up the channel so that a nerve that's been trapped or some area heals. It heals in minutes. And so my father-in-law also had this hip problem. He healed his hip problem in 30 minutes. His heart's perfect. We get on the airplane on the way home, and he looks at me and he goes, Tony, these people that talk about living 110, 120, I don't know about that, but I could live another 20 years. I got a great heart. I got this great body. And he's like, and I'm walking perfectly. He goes, you've only been married to my daughter 22 years. That's like another lifetime, And so what I love is what it does for people. And then same thing with hormones. When somewhere between 35 and 40, sometimes early 40s, hormones start to change radically. Women are more attuned to hormones, but they learn hormone replacement therapy. But I had a guy that came, who's 39 years old, gained I think it was 35, 38 pounds or something like that. Really working out hard, making no progress, lost his sense of drive. And we said, well, have you looked at your hormones? He goes, yeah, my doc looked at my hormones are fine. When we look at the blood test, and his hormones, his testosterone was 160. Most men don't feel alive unless they have 700 to 800, some as much as 1,000. So he doesn't need replacement technically to be alive, but to have his body functioning at ideal was missing. So all he did was a small amount of testosterone, total transformation, loses weight, got his drive, got his libido back, got everything else back. So there's some little things you can do. There's metal tests. I had a really bad hit with mercury because I was a vegan. then I felt like I needed some other form of protein, so I started eating fish. And all I had was salad and fish. But I had tuna and swordfish are my favorites. Those are 75-year-old fish that eat all the smaller fish, and we polluted the water so much now, they're filled with mercury. Wow. And so I went to go get this set of tests, and they tested me, and on a 0 to 5, where 5 is extremely concerning, I was 123. And so I've spent the last 4 or 5 years getting that mercury out of my body. It literally it interrupts your ATP, your energy level. Like if you start feeling foggy or exhausted or tired, it can be metals. Yeah. And about 1 out of every 3 people, including friends that are 25 years old, because of the environment we're in right now, they go and they discover they've got cadmium or they've got lead or they've got mercury. So I really encourage people to go do that metals test. If you're not feeling great, a lot of times when people think it's aging, it's just metals. Yes. And you can get them out of your system when they're small, and it's a hell of a lot easier than what I've gone through in my life.
And it's really interesting because you keep pushing, you can get lost in the fact that it's all in your head.
Yeah.
And the truth is it isn't always all in your head.
Isn't. Sometimes it's physiological as well.
Yeah, I had that recently where I was actually feeling fine, but I went and did a lot of micronutrient tests. I did a lot of other tests. I want to go and do a lot of the tests you just recommended. I'm gonna definitely ask you where I should go. But I went and did a basic vitamin D test. Right, I've been doing these since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I went, and my doctor and my health coach was looking at the stats and everything, and she said to me, Jay, you're at a 10.
Wow.
The average is 60 and 100 is good.
That's
She goes, I don't know how you get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. And that affects your hormones, by the way.
Correct.
D3 affects your hormones.
Yeah, and I was like, I get out of bed just fine. Yeah. And she couldn't believe that I was...
You can overcome a lot with your psychology.
Correct.
Right? I was doing the same thing with mercury in my body.
Correct. But I was thinking, imagine if my body was there too. Like, just imagine what would be possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love what you've done with this book, Life Force, because that's what it's placing emphasis on. Yeah. It's like, go get tested. Go check it out. I love how you use the language of coaches, not commanders.
Yes.
Right? Like, you're not saying to anyone, this is exactly what to do and this is how to do it. You're saying, please go and experiment with these things. Please go and practice them, implement them into your life. That's right. And I cannot wait to figure out how to implement all these things in my life, because I think it's so easy to sit back when you're in your 20s, in your 30s, and just go, oh, I'm okay right now. Things are okay. I can pretty much get away with a bad night out or a cheat meal.
You know what I also wrote this before even the subtitle says it? It's for you and somebody you love.
Yes, I love that.
You're at the stage of life you're in, you're going to start finding more people, whether it be your parents or someone else that's in a challenge. And so there's like, whether it's like for me at this stage of my life, I know so many people that, I don't know, 2 times a month at least, someone calls me and they have a family member with cancer, or somebody's starting to develop Alzheimer's, or somebody had a stroke. And I didn't know what the hell to do before, right? Because the standard of care is so weak in those areas. But here you've got answers that'll blow your mind. Yeah. Or, somebody with Parkinson's, for example, like a grandma or somebody like that. There's this new technique. It's unbelievable. They use ultrasound. It's called incisionless brain surgery. They don't cut you open anyway. I saw this woman who's on 15 medications. I don't know if you've seen somebody with Parkinson's, but they can't even hold a glass. They can't. She couldn't walk across the room. And it's an outpatient process. It's in 100 universities and it's covered by insurance now. This is how unbelievable this is, and most people don't know about it. You go in, it takes about an hour to find the pinpoint spot that's creating the tremor. They treat it for 30 seconds. The woman comes out of the MRI, right? And she gets up, walks across the room, and I'm watching her. And then somebody hands her a glass, and it doesn't hit her like at first. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody gets those audio implants and they hear for the first time, they cry. Yes. But when they hand her the glass, and she can hold the glass, and she just started crying uncontrollably. That was 2 years ago. 2 months ago, she did a 50-mile bike ride, right? I mean, that's the kind of tools that are available. Wow. If you've got someone's got osteoarthritis, and even kids 35, 40 years old, they're athletes, can create some real challenges in their body there. There's a new injection. This is not approved yet. It's at phase 3 trials. So phase 1 is safety, and then phase 2 is efficacy, and then phase 3 is efficacy at scale, then you get approved. So it's in the final stage. They think it'll be approved either in the fall or spring of next year. One injection. If you've got osteoarthritis, it causes your own stem cells to regrow all your tendons based on the original DNA input. So it's like 16-year-old tendons, even if you're 30, 40, 50, or 60 years old, and no more osteoarthritis, brand new tendons inside your body. So this is the kind of world we're in right now. These are things that are happening right now that people just don't know about.
And why don't we know about them? And why is it that you have to go and dig all? Because it seems like what you've done is you've mined. You and the team have gone and mined and gone to the very best to bring this to the fore.
Like all my billionaire friends, they all know this because they all want the cutting edge, right? So all I did is kind of took what I did with Money Master the Game. That's how I got introduced to some of this. And then and also it was my own needs. I tore my rotator cuff so severely following a 22-year-old professional snowboarder down a hill, and I'm not a professional snowboarder. I could not make those moves. And literally when I woke up, I was unconscious. I thought I broke my neck. I ripped my rotator cuffs. So what do? I go to 4 different doctors. They all say, surgery, surgery. Well, what's the prognosis? Well, you may not lift your arm above your shoulder again. It could tear again. How long to repair? How long to rehab? 4 to 6 months. I'm going to be on stage doing this with one arm over here. So I work with a lot of the greatest of all time athletes, and Cristiano Ronaldo was supposed to be out for 3 months. He did stem cells. It took him 2.5 weeks. Wow. So I was like, what about stem? No, they don't work. They don't work. And then it's like, I had the final doc literally look me in the face. And he was a fan of my work. I didn't know going there. And he's like, oh my God, you're the Tony Robbins. And he goes on and on. You saved my marriage. You made me all this money. Da, da, da. And he goes, thanks for hearing that, but now I got to be your doctor. And he puts my spine up and he goes, life as you know it is over. Literally what he said to me. And I said, well, you clearly didn't go to my communication seminar. and he's like, this is not funny. Don't make a joke. This is real. And he goes, you have severe spinal stenosis. I'm in pain for 14 years. And he goes, one good hit and you're quadriplegic. No more jumping, no more running, no more life. And like, if you're hit in the stomach and you're ready for it, I wasn't ready for it. I gotta be honest. There was 2 hours of my feeling like my life was over, and then I got my head back. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna check out stem cells. And I met Bob Harari, one of the top guys in the world. He told me where to go. In the United States, the ones I needed, for your elbow, your knee, your own stem cells might work. But if you're doing a shoulder and a back or something, you need something more powerful. And he said, you need 4-day-old stem cells. I said, I don't want something that comes from baby. He goes, no. He goes, when babies are born, the cord is filled with this and the placenta is filled with these. And so I went and did 4 days of treatment, just an hour a day of an IV and a shot. First day I felt, sleepy. Second day I had a cytokine response. I wasn't scared. I knew what it was, kind of shaking, freezing for 20 minutes. But then I woke up the next morning and not only was my shoulder perfect, you MRI my shoulder, you wouldn't even believe it. No downtime, no surgery. But my spinal stenosis is gone. I got no pain in my spine. And I've had that for 14 years. Wow. So it's like, that's why I wrote this book. I became obsessed. Then the Pope invited me to come speak. The Pope puts on the biggest regenerative conference every 2 years. Mm-hmm. And they wanted me to be the cleanup speaker. I'm like, I'll do that, but I want to go through all 4 days.
Yeah.
And then I met all these people that were sent home to die with cancer, who've been turned around, stage 4 cancer, because some of the techniques in this book. I met Jack Nicklaus, the greatest golfer of all time. He couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes. The pain was so bad. And now was supposed to have a spinal fusion, which he did not do, thank God. And he did stem cells, and now he's 82 playing golf and tennis again. So I was like, I became an evangelist. Mm-hmm. And then I went and said, I want to learn the best of everything. And I learned it was much more than stem cells. It's this, just like you see technology doubling in power every 18 months and having a cost, we are code now. Mm-hmm. So most people have heard of CRISPR. We're literally curing diseases that would never have been cured in history before. And we're at the beginning of that growth curve. So it's only up from here, and the opportunities are extraordinary. But you can think of yourself, but you can also think of people you love who might need your help, and now you'll have answers.
Definitely. I'm so grateful to you, Peter and Robert, for putting this book together, because like I said, I just dived into it and into each chapter, and it's just so comprehensive. It's so dense. It's got every study and research that you need to convince you that it's out there. Yeah. And I love what you just added to what I was saying, that we need to go use it for the people we love. If it's not for us, let's go use it for them.
And then one day, because you helped everybody else, they'll be there for you.
You know how to do it. Exactly. Tony, you have been so generous with your time.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it with you very much, Jay.
You've been so generous with your energy.
Thank you.
And of course, in doing all the work and putting this book together, you can tell that I'm writing my second book right now. And I can tell that when you see a book that is this well-researched and this deeply done, you know that a lot of work has gone into that. So I want to recommend, we're going to put this in the link, in the caption, in the comment section, everywhere, the link to this book. I know that it's already been an incredible international best-selling book all over the world. So if you haven't already got it, I highly recommend you go and get it. Get it for a friend too. Get it for a family member. Get it to give it to someone as well, if you know that they need this right now. And of course, get it for yourself.
And we're donating, I'm donating 100% of the profits from this book, as I've done all 3 of my books, last 3 books, to Feeding America. So we're feeding 20 million meals there. And so besides helping yourself, you're helping other people. And then the balance is going for Alzheimer's, cancer, and heart disease research from 3 of the best researchers in the world. So hopefully the book not only changes your life, but it'll also help other people too.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So you're contributing as well as
100%
reading.
of it,
which is absolutely beautiful. No, I'm saying the audience gets to contribute through you simply by even buying the book. So even buying the book is contributing.
That's true.
Tony, we end every On Purpose interview with the final 5. These are 5 questions that are aimed at usually one word to one sentence answers.
Okay.
But
See
with
if
you,
I'm capable of that.
Yeah, with you, I don't even want to do it with you. I'm like, I don't want to do that with you. I want to break the rules. I'm like, why am I going to restrict your greatness to that? Anyway, so here we go. These are your final 5. We can totally go off piste. I do not care.
Go for it.
I don't care at all. All right. Question number 1 is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
I think for me, my original teacher was Jim Rohn when I met him when I was 17. And I wanted to know why all my fathers were broke, because they were good men. You know, I loved all 4 of my fathers. And I remember him saying, Tony, we're all equal as souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. I was like, what does that mean? And he said, well, think about it. He goes, you need to become more valuable if you want to have economic freedom. He said, you have to work on yourself more than anything else, and you have to work on it in a way where there's something you can do for others better than anyone else, or at least more, at a better quality. And he gave me an example of like working at McDonald's, and he said, you know, if you work at McDonald's, you know, you make whatever it was in those days, $5 an hour, whatever it was. And he said, you know, I go, yeah, but that seems so unfair. And he goes, yeah, and teachers, I gave the example of teachers, and there's these billionaires, you know, that make $1 billion in a year, hedge fund guy, you know. And he said, Tony, the guy you just mentioned, he provided a 40% return last year, and that went to nonprofits and everything else. He said, that means those organizations double their money almost every 2 years. He is adding massive value, hundreds of $1 billion, so he made $1 billion. He goes, this person is doing a job that anyone can learn in 20 minutes or half a day. So it's a beginning job. He said, you got to think of it as one thing. It's all about adding value. How can you do more for others than anybody else in the world? And that stuck with me. I mean, I was just like, I decided I wanted to do more for others than anybody in the world. In order to do that, I had to have certain skills, and I went after those skills, and I still do. Like, it's a never-ending thing. If you think you're a master, you're full of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably some of the best advice I've received, at least on life and business and direction, and it affected my mission.
Yeah, that's great. Second question, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever heard?
Worst piece of advice?
You've ever heard, not received, maybe received, but...
Oh my God. Well, I've had lots of pieces of advice about what to do to my body, which would have, you know, like the really sweet man, like sincere man.
Yes, yeah.
And I realized that people can be sincere and be sincerely wrong.
Yeah.
But like if I would have taken that drug, you know, I probably would have had cancer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I try not to listen to or forget any advice isn't too good. I think anybody who advises you to give up is the wrong, that's probably the worst advice of all, because anything that you persist in long enough, you can find the answer to, I believe.
Yeah, and based on that also, the first piece of advice you get on your health is not always the right piece of advice.
I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yeah.
The Mayo Clinic did a study in 2017. They took 286 patients with various diagnoses, and they took the first diagnosis, and then they had a second doctor do a diagnosis. Only 12% of the time did they match. That means 88% of the time, the first diagnosis and the second were different. As a result, the Mayo Clinic says you should always get a second opinion, and they believe getting a second, even a third one, refines the diagnosis and makes it better, because everyone's working through their perceptions. It's not, we think of medicine as like black and white, you know, it's right or it's wrong. And it's a lot of art in medicine. And people don't realize that. And that's why the standard of care doesn't always get the result they want. That's why these breakthrough doctors, beyond the standard of care, they were attacked, some of them in the beginning. Like there's a man named Dr. June in there who created these CAR T cells. And I think it's Nature just did a publication 10 years later. They're still, you know, in cancer, they never call it a cure. They're actually calling it a cure for the first time for liquid, you know, like leukemia and things like liquid cancers. And it's like, it's amazing. So you've got to understand that there's more than one opinion, and you don't give up too easily with just one.